The grand chamber of the Galactic Council stretched upward like the inside of a massive cathedral. Its walls made of living crystal that hummed with the voices of 47 different species. And Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood at its center feeling very small and very human. She had prepared for this moment her entire life. And her mother had prepared before her, and her grandmother before that. Because the Vasquez family had served as Earth's voice among the stars for 5 generations now. Each one carrying the same quiet hope that maybe this time things would be different. The chamber was designed to make visitors feel insignificant. And it worked beautifully, with towering seats arranged in circles that rose higher and higher until the most powerful species sat so far above that they appeared as distant shapes wreathed in light. Looking down upon the petitioners below like gods examining insects, Elena wore the simple blue uniform of the Earth Diplomatic Corps. No medals or decorations, because humans had learned long ago that the Council viewed such displays from lesser species as amusing at best and offensive at worst. So she stood plain and professional with her hands folded and her spine straight. The Council recognizes the representative of Earth, announced the Volante High Speaker, his crystalline body refracting the chamber lights into rainbow patterns as he moved, his voice carrying that harmonic resonance that all Volante possessed. Beautiful and cold like wind chimes in a winter storm. "Thank you, High Speaker," Elena said, her voice steady despite the thousands of alien eyes upon her. "I come before this honored assembly to formally request that humanity's status be elevated from probationary member to full standing member of the galactic community." A ripple of movement passed through the chamber, delegates shifting and murmuring to each other. And Elena could already see the amusement spreading across faces, both familiar and strange. She continued anyway, because this was the ritual. Because Earth had played this game for 200 years and would play it today, regardless of the outcome, in the 2 centuries since first contact. Humanity has fulfilled every obligation placed upon us without exception, she stated, activating the holographic display that showed Earth's record. "We have paid all tribute tariffs in full and on time. We have provided military support for 17 hegemony border conflicts resulting in the deaths of over 4 million human soldiers. We have shared 732 scientific discoveries with the Council freely and without compensation. And we have restricted our colonization to only 3 systems despite our population, exceeding 40 billion souls." The numbers hung in the air, glowing softly, a testament to 2 centuries of compliance, of patience, of hope. "We ask only to be recognized as equals," Elena finished, "to have the same rights and privileges as any other member species. Nothing more and nothing less." The silence that followed was not the respectful quiet of consideration, but the loaded pause before laughter. And Elena knew what was coming even before the first sound escaped the Volante High Speaker's crystalline format started as a single harmonic tone, almost musical, but there was no mistaking its meaning. And then the Kreth ambassador joined in with his species' barking grunts of amusement. And then the Mordani with their hissing chitters. And soon the entire chamber rang with the laughter of 46 species. Elena stood motionless at the center of it all, her face carefully blank, her hands still folded. Because this was not the first time she had been laughed at, and it would not break her. The Kreth ambassador rose from his seat, his massive frame covered in thick gray hide, his forearms spread wide in a gesture of theatrical disbelief. "Every century, the humans come before us with this same request," he bellowed, his translator rendering his words in harsh mechanical tones. "And every century we must remind them of their place, for they are useful labor animals, nothing more. Strong backs and clever hands to serve their betters." More laughter, louder now. And Elena felt it wash over her like waves against a stone. The Mordani delegate spoke next, her serpentine body coiled around her speaking platform, her many eyes glittering with cruel humor. "The humans live such brief lives," she hissed. Barely a century if they are fortunate, dying like fruit flies while the rest of us endure. And they expect us to trust them with real responsibility when they cannot even trust their own bodies to persist. Elena had heard these arguments before, had heard them from her mother and her grandmother. The same words repeated across generations, because the Council never needed new reasons to deny humanity. The old ones served well enough. The Volante High Speaker raised a crystalline limb to call for order. Though traces of amusement still played through his harmonic voice, "We shall vote on the petition of Earth," he announced. "All those in favor of elevating humanity to full standing member status?" One light appeared in the vast chamber, a single vote from the Dasari delegation. Those gentle beings who had shown humanity kindness since first contact, but whose voice carried little weight among the greater powers. All those opposed? 46 lights blazed to life, filling the chamber with harsh illumination. A wall of rejection that stretched from floor to ceiling. "The motion fails," the High Speaker declared, something almost like satisfaction coloring his tones. "Earth shall remain a probationary member indefinitely, and this matter shall not be raised again for another standard century." Elena stood in the center of that crushing light, surrounded by the contempt of nearly 50 species. And she smiled. It was a small smile, barely visible, but it was real. And something about it made the nearest delegates shift uncomfortably in their seats. "Earth acknowledges the Council's decision," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber despite its softness. And then she bowed with perfect grace and turned to walk away. She did not hurry, did not show anger or despair, simply walked with measured steps toward the exit while the Council watched in puzzled silence. Because humans usually begged or protested or wept at this point. But this one simply smiled and left. Ambassador Vasquez reached her ship, the diplomatic vessel Quiet Resolve, within the hour, moving through the station corridors with that same measured pace, while her security detail fell in around her. Only when the airlock sealed behind her did she allow herself to breathe deeply, to feel the weight of what had just happened and what was about to happen. "Get me a secure channel to Earth Command," she ordered her communications officer. "Priority Alpha. Authorization Vasquez-7-7-9. The officer's eyes widened because Priority Alpha had not been used in his lifetime. But he complied without question, and within minutes, the face of General Yuki Tanaka appeared on the screen. "Ambassador," the general said, her voice carefully neutral. "How did the vote proceed?" Elena looked into the eyes of the woman who commanded all of Earth's military forces. The woman who had been waiting for this call for her entire career, and spoke 4 words that would change the galaxy forever. "They laughed at us." General Tanaka closed her eyes for just a moment. And when she opened them again, they held something hard and bright and terrifying. "Understood," she said. "What is your recommendation?" Elena thought of her mother, who had stood in this same chamber and been laughed at, and her grandmother before her, and all the generations of humans who had bowed and scraped and smiled while building something in the shadows. "Invoke Prometheus," she said. The general nodded once, sharply, and the connection ended. Elena sat back in her chair as the Quiet Resolve broke away from the station and oriented toward home. Toward the Earth that the Council thought they knew. Toward the humanity that had been hiding in plain sight for 200 years. They had laughed at her today. They would not be laughing for much longer. General Yuki Tanaka stood in the heart of Earth Union Strategic Command, a vast underground complex hidden beneath the Swiss Alps that officially did not exist. Surrounded by screens showing data that the Galactic Council had never seen and would never have believed. Prometheus authorization codes had been entered. And now systems that had slept for decades were waking up across human space. Hidden networks activating, secret installations powering on. And the true face of humanity slowly revealing itself. "Begin the historical briefing," she ordered her staff. I want everyone to understand exactly what we are doing and why. The main screen flickered to life, showing footage from 212 years ago, the day of first contact when the Volanthi scout ship had appeared in Earth's orbit and humanity had learned they were not alone in the universe. Those first meetings had seemed promising at first, with the Volanthi presenting themselves as enlightened guides who would welcome humanity into a vast galactic civilization. But the truth had become clear within months. Humanity was not being welcomed as equals, but as servants, as a new source of labor and resources for species that had ruled the stars for millennia. And the terms of membership in the Galactic Council were nothing more than a dressed-up form of conquest. My great-great-grandmother was part of the original response team, Tanaka said quietly, watching the old footage play. She was there when the decision was made. The decision had been simple in concept but staggering in scope. For humanity would not fight a war they could not win, would not rage uselessly against species with technology centuries beyond their own. But neither would they truly submit. Instead, they would pretend. The screen showed the first human delegation bowing before the council, accepting the harsh terms of probationary membership with apparent gratitude. And Tanaka knew that every smile on those ancient faces hid a cold determination that would burn across generations. Project Prometheus was initiated within 6 months of first contact. The briefing continued, showing organizational charts and resource allocations that spanned 2 centuries. Its goal was simple: to build a parallel civilization in complete secrecy while maintaining the appearance of total compliance. The numbers were almost impossible to comprehend, representing the largest coordinated deception in human history. Every scientific discovery shared with the Council had been carefully selected to appear impressive while actually representing technology decades behind humanity's true capabilities. With real breakthroughs hidden away in facilities the aliens would never find. Every human soldier sent to die in hegemony wars had also been intelligence operative, gathering information about alien military capabilities, mapping supply routes and defensive networks, identifying weaknesses that might one day be exploited. Every tribute payment had been skimmed and redirected through complex financial networks, funding the construction of hidden infrastructure across star systems. The Council did not know humanity had reached 342 systems, Tanaka said, letting the number hang in the air. That is how many worlds we have colonized in secret, connected by wormhole gates built with technology we have never shared, populated by humans who have lived their entire lives free of Council oversight. The hidden civilization had grown slowly at first, just a handful of pioneer ships slipping away into unexplored space. But human reproduction rates far exceeded those of most Council species. And 200 years was a long time. What had started as desperate colonies of a few thousand had grown into thriving worlds of millions. And those worlds had built more ships and founded more colonies, generation after generation, until the shadow civilization dwarfed the official human presence that the Council monitored so carefully. The Council thinks humanity numbers 40 billion across 3 systems, Tanaka continued. The actual number is closer to 170 billion across 342 systems. And every single one of them has been waiting for this day. The briefing showed images of the hidden territories, worlds that had never known Council rule, cities built by humans for humans, shipyards producing vessels of designs the galaxy had never seen, and everywhere the quiet pride of a people who had refused to accept the chains offered to them. "What about our official colonies?" asked one of the younger officers. "The 3 systems the Council knows about? They are being evacuated as we speak," Tanaka replied. "We have been moving people out slowly for the past decade, and the final transports are leaving now. By tomorrow, those worlds will be empty shells monitored by automated systems. The officer looked troubled. And the 4.7 million humans working across council space, the ones they call immigrant laborers? Tanaka allowed herself a small smile. Every single one of them is a Prometheus operative. They have been in position for years waiting for activation. And right now, they are making their way to extraction points we have maintained in secret across the Yaos galaxy. It was the largest coordinated extraction in history. Millions of people moving simultaneously through hidden routes and secret passages, disappearing from council space like smoke in the wind. The tributary shipments that were scheduled for this month have been recalled. Another officer reported. The cargo vessels are returning to human space. Good, Tanaka nodded. And the diplomatic channels? Going dark in sequence? All communication with council species will cease within the hour. Tanaka walked to the main display and looked at the map of human space. The vast hidden network that her ancestors had built through sacrifice and patience. And she thought of her great-grandmother who had helped plant the seeds she was now harvesting. 200 years, she said softly. That is how long we have waited, how long we have smiled and bowed and called them masters while building all of this in the shadows. She turned to face her command staff. Men and women who had trained their entire lives for a moment that had seemed almost mythical until today. Prometheus Protocol is now fully active. As of midnight Greenwich Mean Time, every treaty, compact, and agreement that humanity has ever signed with any galactic power is formally nullified. We are no longer probationary members of anything. We are no longer bound by their rules or their expectations. We are simply human. And we will never bow again. The command center erupted in cheers. Years of training and secrecy finally giving way to the release of this moment. And Tanaka let them celebrate for a few seconds before raising her hand for silence. This is not a declaration of war. She reminded them firmly. We are not attacking anyone. We are not making demands. We are simply withdrawing from a system that treated us as livestock. But make no mistake, if they come for us, if they try to force us back into chains, they will learn exactly what we have been building all this time. She thought of Ambassador Vasquez, still aboard the Quiet Resolve and heading home. The woman who had stood in the council chamber and received their contempt with a smile. They laughed at us, Tanaka said. They have been laughing at us for 2 centuries, calling us animals and insects and servants. But we were never any of those things. She looked at the map one final time, at the true scope of human civilization spreading across the galaxy like a secret constellation. We were patient, she said. And now they will learn what human patience can build. The lights across the display began to shift. Hidden systems going active, one by one, and humanity stepped out of the shadows at last. The first week after humanity's disappearance was marked by confusion, the second by growing unease. And by the third week, the Galactic Council had descended into something very close to panic high. Speaker Velith stood before the emergency session of the council, his crystalline body flickering with agitated light patterns that betrayed his calm voice. As delegates from 46 species demanded answers that no one could provide, the human systems are empty, reported the Kreth military commander, his massive frame hunched with an unfamiliar emotion that might have been worry. Our scouts have surveyed all 3 of their official colonies and found nothing but automated maintenance systems. The population of 40 billion has simply vanished. Vanished where? Demanded the Mordani delegate, her serpentine body coiled tight with tension. 40 billion beings cannot simply disappear. And yet they have, the commander replied. There is no debris, no signs of conflict, no evidence of mass death. They are simply gone. The chamber buzzed with agitated conversation as species who had spent centuries looking down upon. Humanity now found themselves deeply unsettled by the absence. of their supposed inferiors, but the missing humans were only the beginning of the problems. We have a more immediate concern, announced the Volante technical advisor, stepping forward with obvious reluctance. Our quantum communication network has been compromised. The silence that followed was absolute, because the quantum network was the backbone of galactic civilization, allowing instant communication across light years and coordinating everything from trade to military operations. Compromised how? High Speaker Veleth demanded. The network was built using human-developed quantum entanglement protocols, the advisor explained. Technology they shared freely 60 years ago. And we have discovered that those protocols contain hidden access points, backdoors, that would allow anyone with the proper codes to intercept any communication on the network. Are you telling me, the Mordani delegate hissed, that the humans have been able to listen to every private communication in Council space for 60 years? We do not know if they actually use this capability, the advisor said quickly, but the capability existed, and we cannot determine how much they might have learned. The Council had shut down the quantum network immediately, but the damage was already done, not just to their communications, but to their confidence, because suddenly, everything humanity had ever given them seemed suspicious. The Kreth agricultural minister reported next, and his news was equally disturbing. 30% of our food production relies on automated systems designed by human engineers, he said. Systems we adopted because they were efficient and freely offered. And those systems are still functioning. But yields have begun dropping across all installations. Sabotage? The High Speaker asked. Nothing so obvious, the minister replied. The systems appear to be working normally, but subtle changes in timing and resource allocation are reducing output. It is as if the machines are slowly forgetting how to do their jobs properly, and our own engineers cannot understand the code well enough to fix the problems. Similar reports came from other species, revealing how deeply human technology and labor had woven itself into the fabric of galactic civilization, the Asari. Those gentle beings who had always voted in humanity's favor presented the most troubling intelligence of all. We have been examining the records of human workers across Council space, their delegate said quietly. The ones you called immigrant laborers, and we have found disturbing patterns. The display showed maps with red dots marking the positions of human workers over the past 50 years. And those dots clustered around military installations, communication hubs, research facilities, and government buildings across dozens of species territories. Every human worker was placed strategically, the Lazari continued. They were not seeking employment randomly, but following a coordinated plan. And the information they could have gathered over 5 decades is incalculable. The Mordani delegate who had laughed loudest at Ambassador Vasquez spoke into the horrified silence. They know everything. Our defenses, our weaknesses, our secrets. They know all of it, and still no attack came. Days turned into weeks with no human vessels appearing on scanners. No demands delivered through back channels. No threats or ultimatums. Just silence stretching across the void where humanity used to be. Silence was worse than any weapon. Ambassador Vasquez released a single public statement that was broadcast across every remaining communication channel in Council space, and leaders of every species gathered to hear what demands humanity would make her face appeared on screens across the galaxy, calm and composed. The same woman who had smiled while being laughed at in the Council chamber. Humanity has no quarrel with any species, she said. We simply no longer consent to be governed by those who hold us in contempt. Our treaties are void. Our borders are closed. Our patience is ended. She paused, and something in her eyes made viewers across 1,000 worlds lean forward. We suggest the Council learn to thrive without us, as you always claimed you could, the message ended. And the silence continued. High Speaker Velith attempted to rally the council, calling for a formal condemnation of humanity's withdrawal. But the vote that should have been unanimous faltered, as species after species abstained, not out of sympathy for humanity, but out of fear of what else they had missed, fear of what hidden capabilities humanity might possess, fear of what would happen if they pushed too hard against beings who had proven themselves capable of deceiving an entire galaxy. For 2 centuries, the Kreth delegate, who had called humans useful labor animals, sat quietly in his seat, and his 4 hands trembled slightly as he thought about how many human workers had served in his species' military command centers over the years. The Mordani delegate, who had mocked human lifespans, stared at nothing, calculating how many generations of human operatives had come and gone while her people remained oblivious and somewhere in the vast darkness between stars. Humanity waited. They did not need to attack. They did not need to threaten. They simply needed to exist, hidden and capable and patient. While the council slowly realized how completely they had underestimated the species they had treated as servants for 200 years, the fear would do the restand. In the hidden territories where human civilization thrived far from council eyes, 170 billion people went about their lives in peace, knowing that their long game was finally paying off. They had never wanted war. They had only wanted respect, and now, for the first time in 2 centuries, the galaxy was learning to give it to them. The Kreth Dominion had ruled their corner of the galaxy through strength for over 3,000 years, and their leaders could not accept that a species they had dismissed as animals had simply walked away without consequence. "We must respond with force," declared Fleet Commander Korvax to the assembled War Council, his gray hide flushed dark with anger. "Every day we allow this insult to stand makes us look weaker in the eyes of the galaxy." The other Kreth commanders rumbled their agreement, because this was how they understood the universe, through dominance and submission, through the simple truth that the strong ruled the weak. The humans have hidden themselves somewhere in unexplored space, Korvax continued, but we have intelligence on their likely locations, gathered from the trajectory data of their evacuation ships. And we will find them, and we will remind them of their place. 2,000 warships assembled for the punitive expedition, the largest Kreth military mobilization in 300 years. Each vessel bristling with weapons that could crack planets and crews eager for the glory of putting humanity back in chains. The fleet jumped to Earth's solar system first, because symbolism mattered and crushing. Humanity's homeworld would send a message that could not be ignored. They emerged from hyperspace with weapons charged and shields raised, prepared for desperate resistance from a cornered enemy. They found nothing. The yellow star still burned at the center of the system, but the planets were gone. All 8 of them vanished as if they had never existed. And in their place hung a single navigation beacon broadcasting a simple message on repeat: "Earth has relocated. Please do not attempt to find us." Commander Korvax stared at the empty space where a civilization should have been. And for the first time in his long military career, he felt something cold settle in his stomach that might have been doubt. How is this possible? One of his officers whispered, "You cannot move planets." "Apparently the humans can," Korvax replied grimly. "Continue to the secondary coordinates. We will find them regardless of where they have hidden." The fleet pressed deeper into unexplored space, following intelligence that suddenly seemed far less reliable than it had before. Jumping from system to system in search of their quarry, they found the first human installation 3 days later. A small defensive platform orbiting a barren moon at the edge of a system that had never been catalogued in Council records. The platform was tiny compared to the Kreth Armada, barely larger than a transport shuttle, and sensors indicated a crew of exactly 12 humans. Pathetic, Korvax sneered, his confidence returning at the sight of such a meager defense. "Broadcast our demands for immediate surrender." The communication officer complied, and moments later, a human face appeared on the main screen. A young woman with calm eyes and an expression that showed no fear whatsoever. "Kreth vessels. You are approaching human sovereign space," she said. "This is your only warning. Turn back now." Korvax barked with laughter. "You have 12 crew members and we have 2,000 warships. On what grounds do you expect us to retreat?" "On the grounds that we would prefer not to harm you," the woman replied. "But we will if you force us to. This platform represents our hospitality. Our actual defenses have not yet been activated." "Your hospitality?" Korvax could barely contain his amusement. "Very well. Show us this hospitality." The woman nodded once. "As you wish." A single missile launched from the platform, so small that the Kreth sensors almost missed it, and it accelerated toward the fleet at a velocity that the tracking systems insisted was impossible. It struck the destroyer Vengeful Claw dead center, and the warship simply ceased to exist. There was no explosion, no debris field, no escape pods. The vessel was there one moment and gone the next, as if reality itself had simply forgotten that it had ever existed. And 800 Kreth warriors vanished with it. The fleet recoiled in shock, ships breaking formation as commanders screamed for information that their sensors could not provide. "What was that?" Korvax demanded, his voice tight. "What kind of weapon?" His science officer was trembling as he studied the readings. "I do not know, Commander. The missile did not detonate in any conventional sense. It appears to have created a localized disruption in space-time that simply erased the Vengeful Claw from existence." "One missile," Korvax whispered. "One missile from a platform crewed by 12 humans." The woman's face still watched from the screen, patient and untroubled. "That was a demonstration. You are welcome to proceed into human space. We will not stop you. But you should understand that this platform is the smallest and least armed installation on our border." She paused, letting her words sink in. "The beings you called labor animals have spent 200 years preparing for this moment. Commander, we have technologies you cannot comprehend and resources you cannot imagine. And we have absolutely no desire to use them against you. Then what do you want?" Korvax demanded. "We want you to leave us alone," the woman said simply. "That is all we have ever wanted, to live in peace without being treated as servants or slaves. Go home. Tell your leaders what you have seen, and make them understand that the old relationship between our species is over." Korvax looked at the empty space where the Vengeful Claw had been, and then at his tactical display showing 2,000 ships that suddenly seemed very fragile. Intelligence reports began filtering in from long-range scouts. Data that painted an impossible picture of human civilization. Not 3 systems, but hundreds. Not 40 billion people, but nearly 200 billion. Not the primitive technology the Council had been given, but something far more advanced. Shipyards and defense stations and weapons that the Kreth could not even categorize. "They lied to us," his intelligence officer said in a hollow voice. "For 2 centuries they showed us only what they wanted us to see. And we believed it because we thought they were too inferior to deceive us." The fleet held position for 4 days while Korvax communicated with the Kreth homeworld. While analysts studied the data and strategists calculated odds that grew worse with every passing hour, humanity was not hiding in fear. Humanity was waiting with patience, and if the Kreth pushed forward, they would learn exactly how much firepower that patience had built on the 5th day. Fleet Commander Korvax gave the order to withdraw. The journey home was silent. 2,000 warships returning without glory, without conquest, without the easy victory they had expected over a species they had dismissed as animals. The High Council of the Kreth Dominion quietly replaced their military leadership within the week and across the galaxy. Word spread of what had happened, of the fleet that had gone to punish humanity and returned humbled. Of the single platform crewed by 12 humans that had turned back an armada with a demonstration of power no one could explain. The laughter had stopped, fear had taken its place, and in the vast territories of human space, 170 billion people continued their lives in peace, protected by defenses that the galaxy was only beginning to understand. They had never wanted war, but they had prepared for it anyway, and now everyone knew. 1 year after humanity withdrew from the Galactic Council, the great powers of the galaxy formally requested dialogue. And for the first time in 2 centuries, they asked rather than demanded ambassador. Elena Vasquez had retired to a quiet life on New Geneva, one of the hidden colonies that had flourished far from Council eyes. And she watched the news of the diplomatic request with a satisfaction that ran bone deep. They actually said, please, her daughter noted with amusement. Reading the official communication, I did not think the Volanti knew that word. They are learning, Elena replied. Slowly, but they are learning. The new human delegation was led by Speaker Marcus Chun, a man born on the colony world of Prometheus Prime, who had never once bowed before an alien council, never smiled while being insulted, never known the bitter taste of forced humility that had shaped his predecessors. He was the face of a new humanity, proud and patient and utterly unwilling to accept anything less than equality. The meeting took place on Axiom Prime, in the same grand chamber where Elena had been laughed at a year before. But the atmosphere was radically different this time. No, delegates sat in the towering upper seats, looking down upon the human representative, because Marcus had refused to enter the chamber unless the seating arrangements were modified. And the council had agreed because they no longer had the luxury of dictating terms. The crystalline high speaker, Vela, stood at the center of the chamber alongside Marcus, equals in position, if not yet in understanding, surrounded by delegates from 46 species who watched with expressions ranging from curiosity to barely concealed resentment. Speaker Chun, Velith began, his harmonic voice carefully modulated to convey respect. The Galactic Council thanks you for agreeing to this dialogue. The thanks are premature, Marcus replied calmly. We have agreed to talk, nothing more. Velith shifted uncomfortably but pressed on. We wish to discuss the restoration of relations between humanity and the Council, to find a path forward that addresses the concerns which led to your withdrawal. Our concerns were simple, Marcus said. We were treated as inferior beings for 2 centuries, despite fulfilling every obligation placed upon us. We were denied the dignity that any sentient species deserves. We were laughed at when we asked for equality. The chamber was silent, because there was no denying the truth of his words. We acknowledged that mistakes were made, the Mordani delegate said carefully, choosing each word like she was walking through a minefield. And we are prepared to offer humanity full standing membership in recognition of your demonstrated capabilities. Marcus smiled, and there was no warmth in it. You misunderstand our position. We are not here to rejoin the Council. We have no interest in membership of any kind, full or otherwise. Confusion rippled through the assembled delegates, because in their experience, every species wanted the power and prestige that came with Council membership. Then what do you want? Velith asked. We want to be left alone, Marcus said simply. And we want to engage with the galaxy on our own terms, not as members of your organization, but as a sovereign power whose borders will be respected and whose people will never again be treated as servants. The Kreth delegate who had replaced the one Elena remembered spoke up, his voice rough but lacking the contempt of his predecessor. And if we wish to trade with you, to exchange knowledge and resources, then we will consider such arrangements on a case-by-case basis, Marcus replied. We are not isolationists. We have no desire to cut ourselves off from the galaxy entirely. But every interaction will be conducted between equals or will not happen at all. Velith processed this for a long moment before asking the question that had been burning in every delegate's mind since humanity's withdrawal. Why did you wait so long to reveal your true capabilities? You could have shown your strength centuries ago, and we would have had no choice but to treat you as equals from the beginning. Marcus looked at the High Speaker with something that might have been pity, because strength alone earns fear, not respect, he said. We needed you to show us and yourselves exactly who you were when you believed we were helpless. Now there can be no pretense. You know what you did. We know what we built. And the galaxy knows that the species you mocked for dying like fruit flies outlasted your contempt. The words hung in the air like a judgment. And delegates who had laughed in this very chamber 1 year ago could not meet the humans' eyes. The treaties we propose will not be generous to the Council, Marcus continued. We will demand nothing from you. No tribute, no territory, no apologies. But we will also give nothing away freely. Every exchange will be negotiated fairly. And any species that attempts to exploit or deceive us will find their access to human space permanently revoked. The negotiations that followed lasted for months, with human diplomats proving themselves just as capable at the bargaining table as human engineers had proven themselves at building secret civilizations. Agreements were signed that gave Council species access to technologies they desperately needed, but at prices that reflected their true value rather than the forced tribute of the old arrangement. Diplomatic protocols were established that guaranteed human representatives would be treated with the same courtesy extended to any other sovereign power, and perhaps most importantly, the psychological balance of the galaxy shifted in ways that could not be measured in treaties or trade. Goods other species began to watch humanity differently, not with the contempt of superiors looking down at inferiors, but with the respect of equals, and sometimes the wariness of those who had learned a hard lesson about underestimation. The sorry, who had always voted in humanity's favor, were welcomed as preferred trading partners and found themselves elevated by association with the rising human civilization. The Kreth quietly restructured their entire military doctrine around the assumption that any species might be hiding capabilities beyond their apparent means, and the Volanti High Speaker retired from his position within the year, unable to bear the constant reminder of how completely he had misjudged the beings he had once dismissed as beneath his notice. Elena Vasquez watched all of this from her home on New Geneva, surrounded by grandchildren who would never know what it felt like to bow before an alien council. On the wall of her study hung a single photograph from the day of her final address to the Council, capturing the moment just after the vote against humanity, when 46 species had laughed at the idea of human equality. She kept it as a reminder of where they had come from and how far they had traveled. Earth itself had been relocated to a carefully chosen position near the galaxy's core, a new home orbiting a younger and brighter star, protected by defensive platforms that dwarfed most species' capital ships and surrounded by the thriving worlds of the civilization that humanity had built in secret. Children played in parks beneath an alien sky, told stories of the old compliance as ancient history, growing up in a humanity that had never known submission and never would. They had not conquered the galaxy. They had simply ensured that no one would ever laugh at them again, and that, Elena reflected as she watched her grandchildren play, was victory enough.